Hey, what's up, good people? It's Jay Ray, the co host of Q Points, and I wanted to come to you because there are two really important ways that you can support our show. One is by subscribing to it wherever you listen to or watch your podcasts. Q Points is pretty much everywhere. The other thing that you can do is you can visit us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and on Podchaser, and you can leave us a star rating. Please rate us 5 stars because you know you love Q Points. And on Apple Podcasts and on Podchaser, you can actually leave us a written review. It's not required, but it really does help to spread the word about the show, and it helps people to discover it as they're looking for new podcasts to listen to. We're always appreciative of you supporting Q Points. We thank you so much for all that you've done for us so far, and enjoy the show.
What up, everybody? We are back. I am DJ Sir Daniel.
And my name is Jay Ray, also known by my government as Johnny Ray Cornegay III. What's happening, y'all?
Listen, it's another episode, a brand new spanking episode of Q Points, your safe space for meaningful conversation about Black music and the Black artists that we love. Jay Ray, happy Black History Month.
Happy Black History Month. Listen, it's already February, Sir Daniel. What's happening?
Time, what is that? What is time? What is time? Look, Rihanna's having a baby. It's Black History Month. There's a whole lot going on this week that we can't even keep up. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, Jay Ray. Since last weekend, starting from Thursday, was a complete blur in the best possible way. Thank you to everyone that showed up and showed out for our Janet watch party and everybody that enjoyed the whole documentary bit. That was such a great weekend. I didn't even leave the house Saturday because it was just all of that.
Yeah.
The whole weekend was dope.
Yeah. All of y'all really did show up and show out last week. Well, one, Sir Daniel, it was so much fun with you and I just kind of like asking each other questions about Janet. And I actually had somebody who is a huge Janet fan say, I listened to y'all show and y'all hit all the points.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh my God, thank you.
Yeah. We don't mess around with that kind of stuff.
You know what I mean? So there was that. And then, everybody showing up for the watch party and the after party. We did our first Twitter Spaces last week, y'all.
Which was a lot of fun. Of fun. And we're going to do that again because we had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Hey, Jay Ray, there seems to be a little code. It looks like one of those newfangled QC codes on the bottom corner of our screen there. Is that for the viewers? Can they do something with that?
They absolutely can. So because of who we are here at Q Points, you can now join our text list. If you scan your screen, right? Just put your phone up there, do the thing, scan your screen. Just send us a text. You ain't got to do nothing else. Literally scan your screen. It'll open up your text window. Press send, and you can join our text list to get updates on the show. This is going to be super dope because, we doing stuff, y'all. And we want y'all to be in on it. So yes, you can now join our text list by scanning your screen. It'll be up there all night. Join us at any time.
Absolutely. Well, Jay Ray, as you can see, I'm rocking my my Barbados track jacket tonight because we're talking island things tonight. We're talking about, it is Black History Month. Mm-hmm. And as we said on this show, we want to speak to all facets of Black music, everything, because there's a lot of stuff that as Black people we put down and we don't necessarily speak to as much because we don't consider it ours, but it in fact is ours. It's part of what we've created in this life and what was dropped off in this country via the diaspora.
Mm-hmm.
So tonight we thought, and I will say this, I am not only just a host, a co-host of this show, but I'm also a student. I'm always listening to learn, wanting to learn new things about, especially when it comes to Black music. And tonight we decided to bring in who I consider an expert in Afro-Latin Latino music. This brother I met, oh wow, it's been about almost 3 to 4 years now. I met because we became brothers through the Wax Fundamentals crew. We spin vinyl records. We all have a love for music on vinyl. That's our medium. And we also selectors and DJs, and we come together. We would join at our friend to the show, JB's Record Lounge, to spin records and to entertain the customers and to entertain each other and really to teach each other about stuff that is important to us and that we should all get to know. So this gentleman, let me tell you y'all this. If you ever have the opportunity to hear him spin, this brother, every time he gets on the deck, it's an international experience. It's a thoughtful experience. And it's totally an intentional experience when this brother gets on and he spins his records. I'm talking about none other than our friend, Bruce Phillips. Please welcome him to the show.
Sir!
What's going on, fellas? Pleasure to be here. Man, quite an introduction. Quite an introduction. I'm blushing.
Well, listen, we're gonna do more. So here is the dope thing, right? So Sir Daniel can tell you this. So I came to JB's. That was 2019, right? So came through, y'all was spinning, and I was just hanging out, taking pictures and all of that stuff, right? And you got on and began to spin. There was some salsa and some bossa nova, and I said to Sir Daniel, "Who's that? Who's that? Where did he come from? I need to know more things." And I remember starting to follow you on social media and all of that because one of the things about me. So I've been always a Latin jazz head for as long as I can remember, right? And bossa nova has always been a thing. I'll talk more about that later. And you brought all of those pieces into the set and in this masterful way. So more shine. So everything Sir Daniel said, and we're happy to have you here, brother.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Listen, let's get to it. What people tend to not realize is that out of all the crew members, I think Bruce is actually the youngest of the crew members. And a lot of people don't know that. He hates when we say that. But a lot of people don't realize that because his taste is so elevated. His taste is very elevated, and people will come through, customers that know their music and know their jazz and know their bossa nova and all of that. They'd be like, oh, when he plays something. And so I always wanted to know, what was your introduction to that level, that taste level of music at such an early age? Who opened that door for you?
Well, I guess I'll start it like this. My hometown, originally from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, small city about an hour and 15 minutes west of Philadelphia, straight down the highway, and large Puerto Rican population, Dominican population, Spanish-speaking population in general. I want to say is over 50%. So, in the community I grew up in, I was just always around the music. And I like to say it like this. So not being of any Latin descent, so I was always around the music, surrounded by friends and just in the community. And so I was close enough to the music to where I always appreciated it, but I was far enough away to whereas I didn't investigate it at a young age. When I say younger, just adolescence and my teenage years, until I was a little bit older. And so I want to say I got into more the diasporatic music via the motherland first. When I was younger, I want to say just cruising through the internet in the pre-social media days on message boards and stuff. I was into making, well, I'll take it back a little further. So I was into making beats as well. From the time I was like 13, 14 years old, I started making my first beats. And the way I knew people made beats was through sampling old records, right? So a couple years later, I was like 15, 16, grabbed a record player from Sears, you know what I'm saying? And, from Sears. Sears, dog. Yeah, like 2004. Yeah, I grabbed a Sony, a Sony turntable off the shelf at Sears. Yes.
Wow.
And hooked it up to my little rolling beat machine and into my computer just through the aux cords. And so that kind of started my journey in music. And then, years down the line is when I then started circling back and like, oh, wow, this neighborhood I heard coming from, my friend's window, Sunday afternoon while his mom's cleaning or whatever, or, the music I hear blaring from the car going down King Street as I'm walking, by my basketball. Like, wow, this is some really deep stuff. So there wasn't any kind of one individual. I think I was just in the right place in my environment growing up. And I just kind of had a hunger. I just wanted to, I've always been into history, so I just wanted to know more. So it's all 6 degrees of separation, because then you go back to West Africa and you learn about different rhythms. And then just through studying, then you see how it, traveled to the quote unquote new world in the Caribbean and South America, and how those sounds manifested in those places, in contrast to how those sounds manifested in, let's say, North America, where, certain percussion and drums were outlawed. So those rhythms took on different forms through the instruments that they were played on, as opposed to the traditional instruments they were played on before they got dragged on the boat. You know what I'm saying? So, it's just always been so interesting to me, just trying to learn about these other cultures that are really just, well, I don't want to boil it down to just this, but they're really almost just like a reflection of my own culture, just with different ingredients, how the Africans related to the indigenous folks, and how those folks related to the Europeans, whether it's through forced integration or interaction, or through natural interaction, just as human beings, and seeing how that kind of made just all these different flavors in these different areas that may be geographically separated, but at the end of the day, the humanity is really evident, and I don't think it's a coincidence that these musics are the basis of basically popular music around the world.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
And really have been for the majority of recorded music history now, which we're 120 some odd years into. So,
yeah. And shout out to theologist BBB that's in the check-in. I see you in the chat. And a lot of stuff was while you were speaking, Bruce, some stuff that was coming up for me is the connection. You guys are in Pennsylvania growing up, and just as you said, thankfully the neighbors, the people in the barrio were playing the music, blasting out of the windows. I'm growing up in New York, same thing happens. Our people, especially the West Indians, the Latinos, everybody, you're playing your music and you're sharing it with everybody. It's a communal thing. Even whether you want to or not, you're going to hear this music.
Right.
Oh, yeah. You're going to hear it.
You're gonna hear it, and then
You're gonna hear it today.
When we get together, it becomes a whole bacchanal. It becomes a whole celebration, and I just see so many similarities. But when you think about all of the music and the cultures coming together, and growing up, listening to that music, you touched on popular music. So, like, for our all intents and purposes, if we're talking about people who have from a Afro-Latino background that have come to the forefront of popular music, one person, one figure pops out to me. And before she was Prince's girl, this person was like an accomplished musician, jazz musician, playing in plenty of jazz bands. I'm talking, of course, about Sheila E.
Yeah.
AKA also known as Sheila Escovedo. You know, playing alongside her father, who was in the league all his own, Pete Escovedo. You know, we've been, whether you knew it or not, you've been indoctrinated. You've been touched by Afro-Latino vibes and popular music.
Yeah.
And you just didn't even know it.
Yeah. It's funny that when I think about growing up, and Sheila E. is a perfect example of this when we start thinking about percussion, and you start thinking of, because you can play joints. I've been playing so many joints in preparation for this show, just kind of like randomly going and putting joints on. And you were like, oh, I remember this rhythm from X hip hop song that I grew up listening to. Or, oh, I see now how that rhythm overlapped with what was happening in 70s funk. Oh, okay. It's all coming from the same place. And I love that we're going to spend a second on Sheila E. because, yeah, she showed up, one, in 1984 when we finally got The Glamorous Life, right? Drumsticks in hand, timbales in front, and you're like, wait, what's happening? What's happening now? With this like funky backdrop presented by, you know, Prince, of course, right? And brought it all the way forward and home. But yeah, these sounds have always been with us in some way, shape, or form.
Yes, they definitely have. And you know, it is dope that Sheila was playing with some really thorough musicians before she came out on her own, you know, when she was really young. In her early 20s, you know, playing on tours with folks like Marvin Gaye, George Duke, Herbie Hancock, and she recorded with Herbie Hancock and George Duke for several albums as a percussionist, and her actual debut album, as in being credited on an album cover, was actually shared with her father, Pete and Sheila Escovedo, Solo 2 on Fantasy Records. And it's just a wicked, like, Latin jazz funk album. Amazing percussion. I mean, you got people like Willie Colon, who circle back to later with Fania Records on this album. You've got jazz players like Bill Summers and Billy Cobham on drums. So Sheila was hanging with him, you know, as a very young woman, you know, early 20s. And then, like you said, her father was a percussionist, as was her uncle, Coke Escovedo. And I want to say she may have featured on some of Coke's later albums as well. But yeah, she's definitely, you know, from a thorough background with heavy musicians. So she learned from the greats. And what's always dope to me is to see how the depth of musicianship then can lead to like a pop expertise. You know what I mean? Is really being able to understand music to the point where you have those chops, but you can also translate those chops into something for a wider audience. And that's not easy to do. That's not at all easy to do.
And you know, picking up on that, I think Sheila has kind of said this as well, like, because she had this superior musicianship and she had kind of come from this pedigree, right? By the time she had gotten to Prince, it was almost like deconstructing all of those things, because his style of what he needed her to do was totally different. But when you have the ability and like, oh, okay, well, this is what I would have done with a Herbie or what I would have done with a George. I need to break that down to this for what we're doing over here. Yeah, that's important work.
And really, you can hear her shine too. I mean, this is, part of Prince's genius as well, but on those early tracks, the singles, you get the 12-inch, you get the extended version of Glamorous Life that got the timbale, so the 2-minute timbale solo, you know what I mean, and all this other dope stuff going on. So she still got to stretch out on the singles, on the B-sides and everything. So that was, really dope to see.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You mentioned the 12-inch on the I Would Die For You 12-inch. Same thing. She is going ham on those timbales in the background. And part of that, I think those records are part of it. You cannot confine musicians like that to 3 minutes and 29 seconds on a song. Musicians with a pedigree like a Sheila, like a Prince, like a Pete Escovedo, are used to playing those extended sets because, let's get deep with it. If you look at those musicians, they're taking over. They're no longer, they're channeling, something else that is allowing them the stamina to, because if you or I that have never played drums or any kind of percussion, if we try to do that, what those seasoned professionals do for extended periods of time, for let's say even 5 minutes, we would not be able to hang with that. The palms of our hands will probably be bleeding, all of that. And I say all that, I'm slightly exaggerating, but I'm saying all of that to say that type of musicianship is a channeling process. Those people are channeling something else. Those people are channeling a different kind of spirit when it comes to indigenous music, when it comes to percussion heavy music like that. And that's why I saw this conversation is so important, because I know, Bruce, when you play, you pull a lot from Cuba, you pull a lot from Brazil. So tell us, what's the significance of those particular countries to you, to your ear, as a DJ, as a beat maker, musician? Like, when you pull those records, what do they say to you?
Okay, so I'm actually going to dig into a little bit of what you were saying and then go forward from there. Is that kind of that spirit that you see these musicians exude when they're going through playing their solos or really deep into what they're doing? The music from Africa, West Africa in particular, the origins of the music, it wasn't just music for music's sake. This was music that was part of spiritual ceremonies or religious ceremonies, worship, or certain communal celebrations or ceremonies, whatnot. So the music had like a specific purpose to it, right? It wasn't just music for music's sake. And that attitude really carried on, so to where these different folks were dropped off on their journeys, with the imperialists and the enslavers. To get them through everything that they had to go through, it was the music. It was drawing on those communal messages, that communal energy, and channeling that through the music. And then, you go 200 years, 300 years down, and the rhythms that we see, the basis of the music that we're listening to, the jazz music, especially when we talk about America in particular, just that kind of improvisational musicianship is really channeling of these spirits. So then going to Brazil and Cuba, these are places that, just due to the differing natures of the colonial relationships between the oppressors and the oppressed, the European and the African oppressed folks and indigenous folks, like they had to channel this music in a certain way, and they due to the different politics and relationships in South America and the Caribbean, they were able to use a lot of their traditional instruments to continue these messages. And that's why we see in the music, even until this day, outside of the pop realm, that the music is still very heavily African influence in terms of the polyrhythmic sounds and instrumentation. And I think that's kind of what drew me to those countries, was just trying to learn how, like we were saying earlier, they're almost like reflections of me in our culture here, just with some different ingredients. Things kind of came together in the same way, and people are still trying to express certain things in the same way. So my interest in Brazilian music it started in my late teens. Again, just reading different books and reading things online. I think I may have read an article online which was about something Brazilian, and it just got me on like a journey. But there's artists such as like Milton Banana. He's a drummer, bossa nova drummer, samba. But playing the trap drums, and now he's of European origins, but he's playing this music that is built upon samba rhythms, which are coming from Western Central Africa, and doing it in a way that's old world and new world, and people such as Tim Maia. This is actually my first Brazilian record I ever got. And he was an intro into Brazilian music for me, because he did kind of a Brazilian style of American soul and funk music. So it was a little more digestible to get into a cat like Tim Maia. And that was, he was a big entry point into the world of Brazilian music. He actually came to the States while he was younger, just trying to be a part of the music, which is so. And that goes back to we all came from a common history, and then we're spread apart to these different places. And it's funny how you can go somewhere else to almost go back home, in effect. Yes. So we're talking about the music of the Afro-Latin diaspora, and wanting to dig into that side of our collective history. And here's Tim coming from that side, trying to come up here and tap into this, part of his history. It's really beautiful. But yeah, so Tim was awesome. But it's so much. And then, other cats like Georgie Ben, again, inspired by, U.S. movements, but doing it in his way. This is album Negro e Lindo, Black is Beautiful, in Portuguese. And he actually has tribute songs on here to then Cassius Clay, later Muhammad Ali. But so the music isn't Americanized, but the messages behind it, I don't want to say Americanized, but the messages behind a lot of the songs were influenced by, things going on here and the civil rights and Black Power movements going on here. But then the music behind it is this beautiful just amalgamation of soul and samba and jazz in a very distinctively Brazilian way. And then the music of Cuba. Yeah, I got some Cuban records on my lap right now too.
One thing Bruce is gonna have a record connected to whatever you're talking about,
right?
Because the brother is serious, and I love the conversation. I just want to touch on one thing that you said, Bruce. You were talking about how the drums were all a part of ceremony. I say worship, because if you look at it, if you think about every time you see the African peoples having a celebration, there's always somebody there with percussion. Now, here in America, what do we always have? If you go to any of our black churches, one thing the black church is going to have, they're going to have a drummer.
They are.
They're going to have somebody with the sticks because that's a part of ushering in the spirit. And I just want us to sit with that and think about it, because that there's a connection. If you feel like you're disconnected, you're not. Really, everything that has been programmed into us and that we love, there's a through line through everything that we've all been through. And Jerry, did you have a question? Because I could go on. I could, you know me, I could ask you questions.
No, it's not a question. It's more of, and I'm glad we're in Cuba for a second, because today, as I was prepping for the show, I was just going through my list of stuff, that I have, and I pulled out this record that I was like, oh, I forgot. I forgot about it, right? So I pulled out Dene Suarez, Cuban vocalist. Yeah, the Havana sessions, right? The Havana Cultura sessions that Giles Peterson did, and I dropped that record. That joint was so beautiful. Like, I had forgotten how much. The first song is 23 minutes and 40 seconds of her and the band doing something. I think it's Sir No Sir Oh, I think is the name of it. I'll get the exact name. But y'all, go ahead and pull that Dene Suarez record, because what I was listening to, even though I don't speak Spanish, right? I don't speak Spanish, but I could hear I could hear all the conversation happening in the music. And so I just wanted to make that note that we are here in Cuba, and I've always been a fan of music from that country, and I'm dying to see what Bruce has on his lap to talk about too, because I'm sure I'm going to be pulling it to try and find it.
Well, and actually, to make further connections, I think in the background, is that an Eddie Harris album in the background?
There is not
that white one.
No, this is it is. That's right. I got the Les McCann and Eddie Harris
and Les McCann.
Yeah.
So
I forgot I put that up, and it's funny you said green, so I was like, oh, that's what that is. Yes.
So Eddie Harris is actually Cuban, by the way. It's just
I did not know that.
I just wanted to point that out. A little thing. If y'all ain't into Eddie Harris, check out Eddie Harris. Yeah. Amazing soul jazz musician. But anyways, so back to Cuba. One of the biggest bands, or one of the most iconic Cuban bands that kind of crossed over worldwide outside of Cuba was Irakere. And they were started by Chucho Valdez, and Chucho Valdez, Oscar Valdez, percussionist and bassist whose name I am forgetting. But really, they are kind of like, if you want to get into Cuban music, past any, Rhino CD compilation, well, they would probably be on it. But Irakere is definitely a stepping stone. So we're talking about guys like Paquito de Rivera, who came to the States, jazz musician. Chucho Valdez is just a virtuoso pianist. And Arturo Sandoval on the trumpeter. This is actually their second LP and just contains amazing depth of music, from kind of like Latin funk jams all the way to what might be deemed salsa music, and we can talk about that later. That's kind of a wide-ranging name that gets given to a lot of
I was gonna say, you're gonna have to break down the difference between like bossa nova and salsa music for us neophytes who don't know what the differences are. And but while you brought up earlier, you were talking about the fact that you started making beats at a younger age, and we've talked about sampling here on this show before. Can you think of, is there like a sample that of a popular song that you can tie into this music that people will be like, oh, I know that, and then you'd be like, hey, well, listen, that came from our brothers and sisters from either the Latin American countries, you know.
Yeah, I got the record on my lap. I'm trying to think of the Little Kim song that flipped it. It was
No matter
early
what people say.
No matter what people say,
Yeah.
we got to go. And yes, and that is from Cheo Feliciano's comeback LP, 1970, on Via Records, which is a subsidiary of Fania Records, and the song is entitled Esto es el guaguancó, which is this is the guaguancó, the style of music which would also be kind of underneath the salsa banner, or commonly referred to as salsa music. Cheo Feliciano started singing in the late 50s, Puerto Rican singer from the island, and later moved to the States or stateside. And he took a break for several years before this album right here and came back. And this is almost like this is almost like he's like a jazz crooner almost. He did all kinds of music. But on this album right here, he's like a jazz crooner, like a Latin jazz crooner. And then there's like deeper elements of salsa and also like soul in it as well. So again, it's just this amazing amalgamation of sounds that came together in New York. And that's where salsa is from. Salsa is from New York City, from Puerto Ricans, and the largest label was spearheaded by a Dominican musician, Johnny Pacheco. But the music really comes from Puerto Ricans taking their music and Afro-Cuban music and reflecting it in their own cosmopolitan, well, I shouldn't say cosmopolitan, but metropolitan way. That's two different things, I guess, to say, because it wasn't very polished. You know, this was raw street music, but it came from
It was hood.
them.
It was
Yeah,
hood.
it was hood. It was hood music, el barrio. And, you know, and mixing that Afro-Cuban music with a lot of the jazz and soul music that these New York cats came up around, you know? So salsa is really a New York thing. It's of Cuban origin. So it's like, it's from Cuba via Puerto Ricans in New York. So, you know what I mean? So it's from Cuba via New Yorkers, as they would say. Yeah.
And real quick, before we so speaking of Johnny Pacheco, Celia Cruz. So that Johnny and Celia record is magic for those folks that haven't heard it.
Yeah, you know, I thought I pulled that one out. It's in my shelf, and I'm not gonna pull it out now because it'll mess up my camera. But so Celia Cruz then came over to Fania Records, and Fania Records is the label, and Johnny Pacheco is a Dominican I was just talking about a minute ago. So Celia Cruz, originally from Cuba, came to the States in the 60s, and her first album with Fania Records, directed and produced and co-starring Johnny Pacheco, it was 1973, and it has the now kind of iconic Afro-Latin groove. Kimbara is on the album, and that's just one of the amazing tracks on that album. So she ended up having a relationship with Fania Records for about a decade, working with Willie Colon as well. She was part of the Fania All-Stars, who went to Zaire to perform for the Ali Foreman fight. So the Fania All-Stars were on the plane with James Brown and the Spinners, and there's a really dope documentary, The Soul Power. Yeah, Soul Power documentary. Highly recommended. You get to see some amazing footage, very clear and great sounding footage of the Fania All-Stars, including Celia and Johnny Pacheco basically freestyling, improvising on the plane, turning the plane into like a party plane on their way over. But
so we're talking about Celia Cruz, and part of when we think about people that are visible, and when we think of layman people who don't know much about, the Latin American music or Latin music, but we know who Celia Cruz is.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to tell us, like, let the people know, what does she mean to, the Latino community, to the music community as a whole. Like, her impact, just from what you told us, her impact reaches far beyond what we could ever even comprehend.
Mm-hmm. So Celia is really, just as far as any in the Afro-Latin Caribbean world, she is really like the top tier vocalist, and not just from the sound of her voice, but more so of her ability to use her voice truly as an instrument. Just having amazing control of her tone of voice and really being able to, transform songs. You take an original song, you do a cover of it, but she's not just covering it, she's just using that as the sketchbook from where she's going to draw a new picture. And like I said, her relationship then with Fania Records, in the early 70s through the 80s, really brought her to an even wider audience, just worldwide, and working with the people, like I said, like Willie Colon and Johnny Pacheco. And through Fania had distribution through Colombia and Venezuela, and they were really the kingpin Latin label. I say kingpin. I don't know where that came from.
It's probably appropriate for
It's probably true.
Right.
Yeah. So, they had such a wide reach, and that New Yorican salsa sound then went on to, it was big in places like Peru, which is not, which is on the Pacific side, not on the Caribbean side of South America. Then Colombia, which is part of the Caribbean world, the salsa really, it dug deep there and really had its own roots, because then Colombian salsa music in the 80s contributed to, the broadening of the salsa sounds that exist today. And a unique kind of style of Colombian salsa. So yeah, it's really, it's immeasurable how much Celia has really impacted the world of Latin music. And I think, especially for people today, I think it's kind of difficult to understand how somebody could have such a wide reach without all the communication outlets,
right,
that we have today, like if you really wanted, if somebody was big back in the day, that meant people really had to want to give their attention, you know what I mean? Because you have to catch the TV appearance.
Yes.
Live, or that one replay of the show. You have to catch the radio segment, because you're not going to continually hear, her songs. You have to figure out who that person is singing, and write their name down. So Celia is just, one amongst many people who, I think that just kind of speaks to how beloved they are, and how, broadly they're acclaimed, because they did so in also a different era where you really had to, people really had to want to reach out and know about you, or at least your art, not about you, but about your art, so to speak. So yeah,
and I see that it's intergenerational. Like, people pass that on to their children, and they pass on their love for the music to their children. I see that, and we do the same thing. And J. Ray, I guess it's so funny that Bruce kept using the term Nuyorican and
Right.
Nuyorican soul.
Yeah.
And something very special happened this week
Yep.
with a very special project.
Yeah. So in 1997, so I believe it was January 29th, 1997, so just a few days ago, the New Eurekan Soul Project, which was spearheaded, of course, by Masters at Work. We're talking Louis Vega and Kenny Dope. And if y'all don't know who Kenny Vega and Louis Dope, Louis Vega and Kenny Dope is, if you don't know who they are, y'all need to know. Right. Y'all need to know. But the New Eurekan Soul record, and Bruce, thank you so much for connecting all these dots, because you just connected a bunch of dots that I had not really been aware of, and it now all makes sense about what was happening in New York in the 70s with Fania Records that led to what ultimately became this album. But the New Eurekan Soul Project was special for a couple of reasons. One, it combined all of these influences that were happening in New York, right, at the time. So we have jazz, you have salsa, you have soul, you have hip hop, and you have house. All of them show up in some form on the New Eurekan Soul album. So you get George Benson. The last track on the record is 9 minutes. It's the best 9 minutes you'll ever spend because it's just George and a guitar and him scatting, and it's a house joint. It's crazy. You have Jazzy Jeff doing an interlude, and they're taking the scratches and creating a tapestry with the scratches that he's making on the album. You have it's just one of those records that captured a moment in time. And it's almost, I wasn't surprised that there wasn't really a second album, because I'm like, I don't even know how you can do that again. Like, I'm not really sure if Jocelyn Brown can do exactly what she did on this record again. You know what I'm saying? Because it was just like the energy of it. But I remembered how special the record was, and Sir Daniel knows the story. And I may have even said it when I first met you, when we did the Music is the Key podcast, Bruce. But I was in the record store. So this is 97. And I was in the record store, shopping. And I had my CD Walkman, because that's what we had back then, y'all. Well, apparently I pulled it out and I dropped it. So it popped open. And the New Eurekan Soul record came out and it spun and it fell on the counter. And the dude behind the counter was like, yo, that record is dope. And I knew at that moment that this white man standing behind the counter, and looking at this brown CD cover with just New Eurekan Soul written on it, but understanding the impact of it, meant something. And it was one of the best records of 1997, point blank period. And you can drop it today, play it top to bottom, and never skip. And it's going to take you have Roy Ayers doing disco. What? It's great. Everything is great.
Is it Tito Puente on the album as well?
Tito Puente is on that album as well. You have, of course, India singing Runaway. So you go from Sweet Tears, you come out of Sweet Tears into Runaway. It's nuts. Sequencing wise, it's crazy. Anyway, it celebrated 25 years. And it is an absolute record that folks should definitely go play tonight and tomorrow while you work. It'll never stop. I did put that behind me. I remembered, I was like, oh, let me pull out. That's literally just the Jocelyn Brown single, because you kind of can't get the vinyl. The vinyl is probably like $500 now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to the New Eurekan Soul Project, my introduction to it is, I've been here in Atlanta for years now. Mm-hmm. And I began listening to WCLK in the mornings. Mm-hmm. This particular DJ would always open his show. You knew he was coming on the air because he would play Black Gold of the Sun.
Yeah.
And Black Gold of the Sun is one of those records. To me, it feels like a Fifth Dimension record
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because of those
I
that
love the
kind of
Fifth Dimension.
California vocal,
Mm-hmm.
that ascends. You feel like you're
Mm-hmm.
ascending when you hear the music, and it's joyful. It's a spiritual awakening. And so that's my introduction to Nuyorican soul. And again, like J. Ray said, that record is still solid to this day, and it ties into everything that we talked about. Everything how Ray Barretto and his band played at the Summer of Soul concert.
Oh, it was
Remember?
amazing watching
And
that
I didn't see that
performance.
yet. I didn't see
and
that yet.
built. Oh my God! Like you talking about from Harlem, all
Mm-hmm.
parts of people came from all over New York to see that show, and his band played, and it everybody rocked
Yeah.
because it's all still a part of us. It's all a part of us. It's all music that is a part of us, and it's a spiritual thing. Somebody said it here in the chat. Jesus Rodriguez, thank you. Mark McPherson is tuned in
Mm-hmm.
and said drums are a medium for us. It ties our heartbeat to the heartbeat of the ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
So true, so true. And as we wrap up this evening, I know we've talked a lot, and a lot of people may not, all these names are coming to them, and it's like, well, shoot, I want to know. I want to get my bossa nova on. I want to get my salsa on. What do I listen to? Bruce Phillips. What do I start with? Who do I need to listen to so I can at least begin to my journey, my appreciation to this music that we need to start adding and revering amongst the community.
All right, so I was thinking about how I should go about picking these songs earlier today, and I was like, I'm just gonna go with the ones that really move me the most. Just three, just really good tracks that really just move me. And one album I was talking about a moment ago was the album Cheo by Cheo Feliciano, and the song Anacaona, which is about a Taino chiefess, Anacaona, on the island, which is now Dominican Republic and Haiti. She was murdered by the Spanish in 1503, and the song is really just a tribute to her spirit. Where's my notebook at? I wrote down some lyrics.
Bruce, be ready, yo.
Okay.
But yeah, some of the lyrics translated from Spanish go like, I hear the voice of your past. I hear the voice of your heart, and you yearning for the freedom that never came. So it's really just a deep song with a historical bent, and a lot of the songs. I know there's somewhat of a language barrier for some folks, but a lot of these salsa songs, especially from the 70s, were definitely talking about some heavy subjects, a lot of spirituality, a lot of the West African spiritual traditions were talked about in these songs very heavily. And now that's, something that we see becoming an influence in mainstream Black culture in the United States. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
I think, yeah, Cheo Feliciano, his song Anacaona from the Cheo LP, highly recommended. Another song from Cuban artist who was part of or featured in the Buena Vista Social Club, if I can find her album. And her name is Omara Portuondo, and she's still alive today, I believe 92 years young. I think she's still performing. This album is from 1975. It's just titled Omara, and it's produced by Cuban trombonist and guitarist Juan Pablo Torres, who is an amazing artist, solo artist in his own right. And the track off this album is called Hola, Dime Cómo Estás, which is hi, tell me how you're doing. Just a beautiful track, highly recommended. Omar Portuondo. She was her birth back in the day was a little bit of a scandal because her mother came from a wealthy Spanish family, and her father, she ran away to be with her father, who was a black baseball player in Cuba. But yeah, Omara, she was part of the Buena Vista Social Club, but had her own solo career for 30 years prior to that. Yeah, Omar, hola, dime cómo estás. Hi, tell me how you doing. And then, not to forget my Brazilian brothers and sisters. I wanted to hop back down to Brazil, and I didn't talk about them today. It's such a wide world of music in general, and then trying to get down deep in all these Afro-Latin traditions, it's such an undertaking. But hopefully, these three suggestions, people find something beautiful in them. And my last suggestion, Baden Powell from his album Avantage. I forget what that means. I apologize. I didn't write it down in my notes. Tis tis. But the title of the song here is called Consolação, which is consolation, and it was written by Baden Powell. He's a guitarist, heavy in the samba and jazz traditions. He had one of his most iconic albums is entitled Afro Sambas, and it has a lot of standards. Baden basically, like how Herbie Hancock has standards in the jazz community, like Baden, his standards are throughout the bossa nova and samba worlds. So Consolação, Consolation, from his album Avantage. I believe this is 1965. So yeah, Baden Powell, Cheo Feliciano, and Omar Portuando.
So listen, I know that was a lot, but we have you. If we posted the link to Bruce Phillips Afro-Latin 101. The links are all right there for you. He has created a playlist for you to get acclimated, for you to get your groove on, and then you can catch Bruce on the show Everything is Everything Universal Rhythms. Bruce, tell them how they can catch you and how they can keep up with you and whenever you're spinning.
All right. So the Saturday after next, February 12th, is the next edition of my monthly show for Universal Rhythms Radio out of London, UK. My show Everything is Everything, where I really dive into my jazz and Afro-Latin, Brazilian, Cuban, and a lot of African influences. And I mix that together up every month and give it to the people. And you can find out more about that show through universalrhythms.net, or my Instagram is at Bruce Phillips, 2 L's and an S on the end, 15, what you see on your screens. And you can see me when I'm spinning or when I'm just posting my thoughts. Shout out to everybody on the IG community. It's really a beautiful community. I'm learned a lot about music, learned a lot about records, made some great friendships. And yeah, you can see when I'm spinning next. Me and Sir Daniel actually have something coming up the Friday after next for Thank God It's Vinyl.
Thank God It's Vinyl. We haven't. It's been a minute since we spun back to back. But yeah, next Friday the 11th, we'll be at the Best End Brewery, putting it down with our Wax Fundamentals family and some other very talented DJs for Thank God It's Vinyl for their 1-year anniversary. So if you want to come out and meet Bruce Phillips, and he can show you, well, JB is going to be there. So that means that if you have any questions, Bruce can put you on, show you right here. Well, this is what you need to buy from JB. This is what you need to get started on. So yes, come out, get to meet us, get to know us, and have a great time. Listen.
It flies.
I can't believe an hour has passed already, and I don't even think we kind of even scratched the surface of a lot of the stuff that we could talk about.
Absolutely. So,
but that's why it's so important for you guys to keep up with Bruce, because he's got a lot of knowledge.
Yes.
And generate.
Yeah. So listen, y'all know what we do. So first of all, Bruce, just thank you so much, man, for taking what you do, I mean, you take it so seriously. And not only that, you kind of embody this knowledge, you know what I'm saying, in a way that it comes out when you spin. So we just so grateful to have you here. And oh, shout out to Reggie. So Reggie from Reggie's Expressions was up in the chat. So shout out. Hey there, Reggie. So thank you again, Bruce, for just being here. And so here's what y'all can do. You can definitely become a Q Points Insider on our website. The link is in the chat. Please do that. Also, please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. You can also leave us a review there. You can also leave us a review on Podchaser. We really appreciate that. And also, for those of you who are watching us on YouTube, just go ahead and click the subscribe button, click that little bell so you know when we go live. And those of you who are watching us anywhere else, go on over to YouTube and subscribe over there. I'm going to drop the link for all of those in the chat. So, boom, done.
So good.
This has been great. Yes, this has been great, fellas. Thank you so much for having me on this wonderful show. This is such an amazing production, and it's been a pleasure to spend my evening with you, brothers.
No, it's definitely been our pleasure. And J. Ray, what do I always say? Each and every week, brothers and sisters, in this life, you have a choice. You can either pick up the needle or you can let the record play. I'm DJ Sir Daniel.
And my name is J. Ray, y'all.
This has been Q Points. Be good to each other, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.
All right? Peace.